The world of musical theatre is where my next guest, Jamie Reed, started out his career. But starting a family soon encouraged him to make the transition with wife Helen to founding Reed College, the creative arts school that now has an outreach programme across the UK. Jamie has also started a company called The Voice Teacher. Goodness knows where he finds the time. And last year became a fellow of the Royal Society of Arts. Let's find out more. Jamie, welcome to Tea Time with me, Ali Monjack. How you doing?
Hi, Ali. Yeah, I'm good. Thank you. How are you?
Yes, very well. It's, the sun is out, isn't it? And, things have really one more than picked up a pace, haven't they, with life, to be
They
honest?
have. They have. There's a touch more optimism in the air, which is good.
Yeah, definitely. So you must be really busy because, you started Reed College how long ago?
13 and a bit years ago. So 2008 we started, April 2008.
Wow.
So yeah, and it's kind of grown. Yeah, it's grown beyond measure since that point, really. So yeah, it's been a pretty interesting sort of 18 months, as it has been for everybody, but especially working in education and education in the charity sector and performing arts education in the charity sector. It's just kind of been an extra couple of layers of challenge just to keep me on my toes, Ali.
Yeah, definitely. I would say so. So you probably had to find funding from different places as well.
Yeah, so so the college is a registered charity. We're not attached to a university. We're not attached to a secondary school because we guard our independence quite fiercely, actually, because we know that over the last 13 years, we've been able to help a record-breaking number of young people to get into the industry and onto the degree level programs, and we know that what we do works. And if we partner with any schools or universities or what have you, then we give up some degree of control over our hours and our curriculum and our budgets. So we've always stayed independent, but the whole ethos is that we want to support underrepresented and disadvantaged young people to get a start to their career. So a lot of our funding comes from events and live performance stuff and all that kind of thing, which obviously has gone absolutely out of the window over the last 18 months or so. So
Right.
it's been an ongoing challenge, but we've had some terrific support from smaller local charities and lots of recognition from people who've helped us to get the message out. We were lucky enough to have a visit back in November in that little brief moment where the world
Right.
reopened before it hunkered down again. We had a visit from His Royal Highness the Earl of Wessex, Prince Edward, who came out and spent some time at the charity, which was great. And we've got a couple of shows. Hopefully, now we've got a couple of live shows coming up in the next few weeks.
Oh,
Some are live.
fantastic. What's
Yeah.
that then?
So, well, we've got we've got two that are being streamed actually. So on the 19th and 20th of this month, so Saturday and Sunday in June, we've got our actors showcase. It's a play called Collected Grim Tales by Carol Ann Duffy. And it's a beautiful, really visual, really creative piece that our acting students put together with a director called Victoria Gimby, who's a professional theatre director. And we staged it at South Hill Park Theatre in Bracknell with full lighting, sound, costume, completely professional team, but with no audience in there, just with a camera crew. So that's been filmed and that's being streamed live online. And then we've got a hybrid performance on June the 26th, which is here at the college in Reading, where we'll have a small socially distanced audience and the live stream cameras in, which is a thing we call platform performance. So the students have 3 weeks and an empty rehearsal room and no script. And at the other end of the 3 weeks, they have a sold out auditorium and they have to make a show in that time. And
Wow.
it's usually a fringe comedy show. So we teach them basically how to be entrepreneurial. So rather than waiting for someone to give them work, they leave college hopefully knowing how to create their own work as well. So that will go out on the 26th, and then on the 30th of June, actually, we have our musical theatre showcase at the Arlington Arts Centre in Newbury,
Mm.
which is doing two socially distanced live performances at 4:30 and 8 o'clock in the evening, with professional band, live music, and all the full team behind it. So that would be just great to be back in a theatre. I can't wait.
I bet you can't. It's been too long, hasn't it, really?
It
It
really
really has.
has. Yeah.
Everybody in the industry has really suffered though, haven't they? Because they haven't been able to properly go back into a theatre. As you said, and it is quite interesting. But now that, everything seems to be streamed rather than just, live performances, which is, like
Yeah,
a way forward, isn't it?
it is. It's a way to reach wider audiences. Our first kind of brush up against it was for our open day back in November. November 2020. Sorry, there's a singing rehearsal next door. I don't know if you can
Right,
hear a
I
lot of
love
high pitched
it.
sounds going on. But yeah, we had our open day in November, which normally is a packed out event in the building. And we thought, well, let's try the live streaming thing on something like an open day where we've got a little more control than in a live performance, because there's less things going on. And it was terrific because normally we'd have 150 people in the building able to interact with the students. And actually, we had an audience of about 600 odd online who were able to watch the live stream. But because it was a live stream, they could actually ask questions, talk to staff members. We did an improv section in the acting open day where they could make suggestions via our Facebook page, and then the students were creating work around their suggestions. So it was interesting. It does open up new audiences. It's not the same thing as being in a theatre, but the platforms I think have got cleverer as well. So we're the shows that we're streaming are going through a thing called BookTix Live, which
Right,
is lovely because as a consumer, as a ticket holder, when you log on, the show goes live as if it were a live show. It goes live at a particular
right.
time, so it's not like it's on demand. And as you sit there, there's a few program notes that come up on the screen. You can click to download a PDF program. There's a set of curtains on the screen just waving in the breeze with some lights on them, waiting for the show to start. And then at the appropriate moment, the digital curtains go back and the show begins and the lights come down. And it has a sense of the theatre energy to it, even though it's it's being at home, but it gets us
Yeah.
to a wider audience and hopefully engages a few more people in the work that we do as well.
Well, I think that's it, isn't it? I mean, certainly things have gone a lot more digital. So, it's a win-win situation. A wider audience is always a win-win situation, isn't it? Because then
Yeah,
people start, not just buying into, but enjoying your work, which is great. I think it's
yeah,
always satisfying, isn't it? So,
yeah, it is. No, absolutely.
I mean, just sort of wind the clocks back a bit. I mean, you
Yeah,
started out as a musical theatre performer, didn't you? Because you went to the Sylvia Young School.
that's
Yeah.
right. I did hundreds of years ago when the ink on the Bible was still wet. Yeah, I was.
You're not.
um, yeah, so I started off. Well, I began my career as a dancer. So I trained in musical theatre. I'd done the singing and acting and everything. It so happened that the first jobs I got out of school were dance jobs, because it was the late 90s and Riverdance had just gone massive in the Eurovision. So a lot of Irish dance shows popped up. So actually, one of my first major jobs out of school was as the understudy for the principal on Spirit of the Dance on the first world tour of that,
Ah,
which was a lovely first job. I was in my early 20s and took off all over the world, waving my legs around in different arenas for a living, which was fab. And then did the kind of West End musical theatre circuit and did a couple of the big shows in London, and then went a little more back to my roots with more of the singing and acting work. So my grandfather was a jazz musician, so I'd grown up singing,
wow.
and always been around music. So did a couple of albums and bits and pieces like that. Finished up in film and television. I've worked as a choreographer. I've written a couple of musicals that have been performed. So all kinds of stuff over the first sort of 15 years of my working life, in all
Before
areas
you
of the
decide
business,
to
really.
settle down.
Yeah, it was kind of that. So I'd always taught. I'd always loved teaching. And when, in fact, when I finished Sylvia Young, I had 2 years out and did my A levels at Reading School, which is just down the road from where I'm sat now at Reed College, actually. And during that time, I also did my dance teacher training qualifications at a local dance school. And so from about the age of 19 onwards, I
Mm,
started teaching dance classes to begin with. And I really, really enjoyed it. I love working with young people and I really enjoyed seeing them develop. So all throughout my performing career, I always had a split between when I was teaching and when I was performing. And it meant that I had something to come back to, but also it kind of fulfilled something different in me than the performing did. And then when I met my wife, Helen, we met 18 years ago now, and Helen trained at the English National Ballet School. She has performed with Hugh Jackman and all kinds of amazing people. She was a principal dancer for Matthew Bourne in Los Angeles and in the West End. But she'd suffered a chronic knee injury, and her performing career had finished by the time I met her.
Oh,
and she was working for a community centre in Brixton for kids of recent migrants to the UK who were struggling to integrate and needed help with homework and Duke of Edinburgh scheme and all that kind of work.
oh, how
Uh,
lovely.
and we realised that actually between the teaching and the youth work, there was something there, and we loved working together. And by that point, I'd gone more into the acting and singing, and Helen being a tremendous classical dancer, it kind of made sense for us to sort of fill
Combined.
those roles. Yeah. So we started off, the first thing we ever taught together was a summer school in Kent, where Helen is from. And we got off a plane from Turkey 4 hours before because it had been delayed on the way back from our holiday. So we rolled off with no sleep, but we were in our early 20s and still had it in us to kind of muster
Yeah.
that. Yeah. The show must go on sort of job. And from there, we realized that we had a really good partnership as teachers. So then we set up, when we got married, we moved to Thatcham near Newbury, and we set up a theatre school in the village, which continues to run actually. It's no longer ours, but it's something that we ran for 8 or 9 years, teaching younger kids from sort of age of 2 or 3 up to about 15, 16. And again, just thrived doing that and loved it. And as we were just making the transition into thinking about the college level training and the charity and how we could combine Helen's youth work experience with what we
You were
do,
doing, yeah.
yeah, we at the same time our son was born as well,
Wow.
and I did about 1 or 2 shows after Tom was born, and realised that I didn't really particularly want to be off on tour when we had a
No,
family.
they grow
So
up
that was
so quickly, don't they?
they do, and you don't want to miss that. And that was the point where I went, actually, I love this enough for this to be what I do, and I still get my fix of being in the industry by seeing the students do what they do and helping them to achieve their goals. And I was lucky enough to have a really busy performing career, and I felt like that was the right moment to step back. So that was 13 years ago. My son's about to be 14, so that was 13 years ago, and that's where the college all came from, really.
And now you've got trouble on your hands.
Yeah, now I've got a 13-year-old and an 11-year-old and a college.
For your sins. No,
Yeah.
that sounds amazing. That really does. I mean, it's funny, isn't it, how you kind of grow with your children. I mean, I was very much like that as well. I mean, mine are
Mm.
21 and 18 now, would you believe? Gosh, they just grow up so quickly, don't they?
Yeah,
It's just wow.
it's
It's over
terrifying.
a flash. Yeah, and I think you make different choices as well about what you want to do and how you want to be. And I think there's something in I've done a little bit of teaching before. There is something really empowering, isn't there, about teaching people how to do the arts or how to do something.
There is.
Definitely.
Yeah, absolutely. And seeing them kind of blossom. Um, and the sort of work that we do here with them as well. So the the kind of the scope of what we do has changed a lot over the years. So when we
Mm.
began 13 years ago, we started with 6 students in a hall along the Oxford Road near Tilehurst in Reading,
Yeah.
uh, who were 6 young people that we think you've got it in you to get to drama school, to get into degree level training, but you're just not ready yet. And we started working with those guys. It's now, so the intake for September will have 57 young people on full-time courses with us, but we also have an outreach scheme which is called Access to the Arts, which runs all over the country, where we engage with over 4,500 young people across the country every year through outreach programs, which are all free to access, so that we can actually really start to address some of the imbalances in the industry, because things are slowly getting better in terms of diversity and representation, but they're nowhere near good enough. And actually, that comes from grassroots. That comes from reaching out to people to say, this is something you can do. And I
Mm.
know that right now, when you look at a screen, you don't see yourself represented back, but let's change that by getting you involved now. So our outreach goes out to targeted areas all across the country where there are particularly high levels of deprivation or particularly high
Mm.
densities of certain communities who are maybe not currently represented in the mainstream performing arts, and we'll go and work with them for free and funnel them through a whole process of careers advice and schools workshops, and then slightly longer courses, and then hopefully get them down to read and eventually get them into full-time training. So it's got a whole kind of whole scope going right through now, which is fantastic.
That is just amazing. And it seems like your mission as well, because let's face it, it doesn't matter what it is that you're teaching, children, young people that, lived in a deprived situation. It keeps them having hope. It keeps them
Yeah,
moving forward. And also, let's be honest, in some cases, it actually keeps them out of trouble.
it does.
Um,
It does. We always say that actually you don't become an actor because you want to. You become an actor because you were born that way. And if you don't channel it into something, it goes wrong.
yeah.
There's just this kind of mischievous energy that you kind of need to bring to it somewhere, and you have to find the channel for it. And that's the great joy of working with the guys here. You know, they're a really critical age. So the full-time students are between 16 and 23 on average. So they're at a real turning point in their lives of figuring out who they are, you know, and what their life is going to look like. And it's such a privilege to work with them at that stage.
Oh, lovely. It is as well, because, we've just talked about children. They get to a certain age, don't they, as well? And, physically and mentally, you're starting to change anyway as a
Yeah.
person. And if you've got, added pressures from, your living or whatever, I mean, that's amazing that you're giving all those wonderful young people real opportunity, to be themselves and
Yeah.
also, do something, which I think is great. That's just fab. Brilliant.
Oh, lovely. Thank you.
Yeah. So you've been doing that, and now you're sort of, also doing the voice teacher, aren't you? You're also, how do
That's
you
right.
find the time, Jamie?
I'll one day I'll sleep. um, yeah. So the voice teacher. So after when I made the decision to go into full-time teaching, and
Mm,
singing, teaching, and working with singers had become my kind of corner of that bit of the business at Reed. And so I went off. I've always loved teaching singing. I've always loved singing. Has always been part of my life. But I felt like I wanted to really get into it a bit more. Because the way that singers are trained now is completely different than when I was at school. There's so much more opportunity and so much more knowledge and so much more information. So I went off and did a master's degree in voice pedagogy and the teaching of voice, and also qualified through an organization called Still Voice, who I'm no longer affiliated with, but I did a master trainer program with them as well.
mm,
And it really got me interested in the science of voice and how actually when you're training a singer, what exactly are they doing? So I started just running a small one-to-one private practice from home initially in Thatcham. And through over the years, that started to build up. And then I started to get clients who had trained with us at Reed or trained with me privately and were now working in the industry and wanted to come back. And I'm an absolute fiend for musical theatre repertoire. I love musical theatre, and so I'm
I
always a
bet you
complete
do.
geek for knowing like what the next big thing is, and we're getting the sheet music for stuff early and what have you. So that started to build, and then through the MA program, I got really interested in vocal health and looking after singers through voice injury and problems that they might encounter.
Yeah.
Because there's a really big stigma. If you are in a show and you pull a hamstring because of a dance move, you'll be given access to physiotherapy and a couple of weeks off, and you'll be back in, and that's fine. If you run into a vocal difficulty, there's a bit of a stigma around it of going, oh, well, you're not good enough, or you can't hack it, and you don't get the same kind of support. So I started working in that kind of area and started specializing in that. And that's what I wrote my final dissertations and work on a number of years back now. And it became a real area of specialism and interest. So I now do a lot of habilitation coaching with professional speakers and singers who are experiencing some kind of difficulty, whether it's kind of just low-level hoarseness or consistent tiredness, or whether they've had a medical diagnosis of something, but they're getting support on the NHS, but it's their job and they need something doing now. So I
Mm.
started doing that kind of work, and that really built up, and working still with professional singers and performers. And now I'm mentoring and training other voice trainers. So once they've completed mentoring and training with me, then they set up under my brand as part of the voice teacher, operating in a different geographic region so we can serve as many people as possible. So we've now got the voice teacher Reading and West Berkshire, which is me. And then we've got Guildford, Surrey and Hampshire, which is the fantastic Ellie Verkirk. She is the Associate Musical Director for Six in the West End. She's a brilliant
Oh,
musician.
wow.
So she
Yeah.
covers that area. We have Michael, who covers North London, who teaches at a lot of the major drama schools. Julia, who's just opened in Oxford, who has done a lot of West End musicals, and she's a singer-songwriter who's got her music on TV adverts and all kinds. So really wonderful, eclectic collection of people. So doing that as well at the same time.
Yeah, God. Yeah, so as I said, never a dull moment. But it seems to be your passion to help people, whether that be, deprived young people or people who, experience physical, or I suppose it can be emotional though, can't it, when it comes
Definitely.
to voice? Yeah,
Absolutely. Yeah,
yeah,
yeah. I mean, that's so much of it. Because actually the emotional side of things, the voice is a really emotional thing. I was
yeah.
joking with a colleague the other day saying, actually, I think on Valentine's Day, we shouldn't be giving each other cards with hearts on. We should be giving each other cards with larynxes on, because our voices are so emotional. And so, it's where we say, I love you, and where we say, I hate you, and where we laugh, and where we cry, and all of our emotions affect the voice. So yeah, there's a lot of that aspect in it as well.
Yeah,
And
yeah,
there's now
yeah.
there's a really terrific program that's now, it's worldwide. It's an online course called the Vocal Health First Aid. So it's a bit like the mental health first aid that's rolled out, where it's not saying you're a counsellor. It's saying you've now got a basic understanding of what's going on, and you can help to signpost people to further support. And because, as I was saying, there's tended to be a bit of a stigma around vocal health, there's this brilliant program training singers, singing teachers, voice coaches about vocal health, and qualifying them as vocal health first aiders to then send people on to people like myself when they get into trouble. So through the voice teacher business, I work as an assessor on that program, and that's just fascinating, hearing how many people there are out there who've gone, I had no idea, I thought I just couldn't sing anymore, or I thought I'd lost this part of my voice, or what have you, and now there's this whole way of helping
Amazing.
myself and supporting myself. So it's a really
Brilliant.
fascinating area to work in.
It is, because I do understand a little bit about it, because I'm a Reiki master teacher as well, for my
Right.
sins. And
Yeah.
use the old method, the Yasui method, not, which is further down the line of the lineage. So
Okay.
and he uses the original chants, Buddhist chants.
Mm.
And when you actually start chanting, you can hear, because I'm talking to the converted, but it resonates, doesn't it, in
Mm.
your larynx, and it almost releases some sort of energy. It releases,
It really
an
does.
amazing energy.
It really
Yeah,
does. And it releases, when somebody says, like, so many people, when I say what I do, because if I want to put it in a nutshell, it's too complicated to explain what I do if you've just met someone at an event. So say,
yeah,
I'm a singing teacher, because that's just easier. And then people will say, they'll look at me and say, oh, you could never teach me to sing, haha. But if you look into their eyes, they're saying, please teach me to sing, because we have this kind of innate feeling that we want to express ourselves through our voice. And I think through societal conditioning in this country, especially, we just get told to shut up a lot. And people lose this connection to
yeah,
their voice. They're too afraid, oh, I might make a mistake. Someone will judge me about something. And, you just got to let all that stuff out. And so there's a real emotional, energetic, spiritual link to voice as well, which some people really click with, and that really interests them. And for some people, they're like, no, I just need to get through my presentation at work. Shut up. And that's fine.
yeah.
It's about
Yeah,
what works for different people.
yeah, it is what works for different people. I mean, if I was to come and see you, which I might at some point, you never know,
Hey, yeah,
I would be much more interested in the spiritual side of it, and clearing
yeah,
out chakras, I think.
yeah. Well, I'm currently doing a major piece of research on using yoga as a way of helping people with muscle tension in their voices. So people who are experiencing quite chronic voice loss, and being able to use both the postures and the breathing and the meditation involved in yoga to help to habilitate those voices back into use. So we'll have a chat, Ali. We can clear our
Yeah, let's
chakras
do
together,
that.
darling. It'll be
Yeah.
marvelous.
Mm. Yeah.
If you want to go the full spiritual hippie, I literally have the Om sign tattooed on my arm at
Do
the
you?
bottom
Oh
of that. Yeah.
wow! I just love that, Jamie. I
So
do.
there we go.
There we go. So yeah. So did you go out to India or?
No, I've never been. It's somewhere that I absolutely intend to visit at some point in my life. I've never been yet.
Yeah, not at the
But
moment, but
no, quite. Yeah, yeah.
no.
It's hard to go anywhere at the moment.
It is hard
It's
to go anywhere at the moment. But I think I've always wanted to go to Nepal,
oh
as
yeah,
well, to just visit some of those monasteries,
yeah.
so, and hear the monks chanting, because I think that just must be amazing. Really must
Yeah,
be, mustn't it? So that's
yeah.
definitely on my bucket list anyway.
Oh, brilliant.
Yeah, yeah. So, oh, well, good for you. Well, look, thank you for coming on Tea Time today.
That's my
And,
pleasure.
I mean, you are, as you said, found funding and are able to carry things through. But are there things or areas that you still need help with at college?
Yeah, I mean, we're always grateful. So if people are interested in what we do in supporting young people and they just want to volunteer with us, give their time, or maybe they run a business and they feel like they could give something in kind, we're always on board for that. We love when people want to do sponsored stuff for us. So if you want to, if one of your bucket list things is running something or jumping out of something or whatever the thing is, we're always happy to hear from people who want to do kind of sponsored events and team building events, and all of that side of things. But if you go to reedcollege.org, and then
Yeah,
it's / access to the arts, and that will give you all the information on there, and we'd love to hear from you.
super. Is Craig Revel Horwood still a patron?
He is, yes, lovely Craig. We
Oh,
did a show together 21 years ago
yeah,
in London before Strictly. So our two UK based patrons are Dame Judi Dench and Craig Revel Horwood, who are two people that I was fortunate enough to work with in my performing career, who I managed to maintain contact with. So yeah, I'm still I'm in more active contact with Craig than I am with Jude at the moment, but we're still in touch with both, and they lend their name to our work, which is
yeah.
an amazing service.
That's fantastic. I think actually last time I saw you was in Reading. I think it was the cultural event, wasn't it? The Year of Culture.
Oh, the Year of Culture. That's right.
Yeah,
Yes,
absolutely. And I remember interviewing Craig and
that's
yeah,
right.
yeah,
Yeah, there's a video
yeah.
of that on
So
our YouTube channel. Actually, I did a 1 hour live interview with him at Reading Town Hall as part of that Year of Culture, and so
yeah,
that's on our website or on our YouTube channel.
that was a fantastic thing, wasn't it? It really was a really good event for
It
everybody,
was
I
great.
think. And yeah,
Yeah,
bringing the local area together because we're all Berkshire people here, aren't we?
absolutely.
So, for those, I mean, I've got listeners from across the world as well. So
Yeah.
yeah, but
Oh, tremendous.
yeah, so that's cool. Well, as I said, thanks,
Wow.
Jamie, and I think you're doing an amazing job. And yeah, catch up soon.
Thank you, Ali. Lovely to see you.
Bye.
Bye.
Look forward to chatting with my next guest on the Tea Time Sofa this time next Saturday. In the meantime, if you would love to get in touch about having a chat with me, you can reach me on teatime@forthenow.co.uk, or you can find me on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram on Tea Time with AM. Bye for now.